Well, hello everyone, this is Dr. Shelley Plumb, and I would like to welcome you all back to From the Hip. Today we have a producer of a film with us. We have Greg Horvath with us. Now, many of you know that we did a show a while back where we talked about addiction, and addiction is a very troubling subject for a lot of people and very emotional, and our program before touched on families and intervention and that type of thing, but this time we're going to focus on, in the name of the movie, is the business of recovery, and we are going to look at that with Greg Horvath in just a moment. Welcome to PlumbTalk Productions, a full-service production company based in West Palm Beach, Florida. Business owners know that every second of the day is a unique opportunity to reach out to an audience and make an impact. Which marketing options do we dive into and spend our hard-earned dollars? Here at PlumbTalk Productions, we have done our research and we can sum it up all in one word: video. How powerful is video? Well, let's look at some percentages. How about 64%? After watching a video, 64% of users are more likely to buy a product or service online. 100%. YouTube reports that mobile video consumption rises 100% every year. How about 200%? It has been documented that video and email leads to 200 to 300% increase in click-through rates. Oh yes, audiences are most certainly expecting more and expecting it faster. In a day and age when people are overwhelmed with facts and time is limited, they want information in real time. They want it immediately. Video is the perfect medium for that. PlumbTalk Productions is a full-service production company dedicated to helping you find your voice in an efficient, competent, and creative manner through video. What do? The sky is the limit, really. We are pleased to offer many services, from on-location shoots to promotional video and customized Facebook Live video. If you can dream it, we can stream it. That's what we say, and that is the truth. Are customers paying attention? People ask us that all the time. Oh yes, the customers are certainly paying attention to video. That is why we must, as business owners, make every second count and increase revenue through the power of video. At PlumbTalk Productions, we can do this fast and affordably with the quality our consumers expect. So, reach out. Reach out now. We're easy to reach through our website at PlumbTalkProductions.com. Call us at 561-855-0764. Don't wait. Now is the time for video. We are dedicated to helping you make every moment count. Well, hey everyone, we are back and we are here with Greg Horvath. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Now, your movie is The Business of Recovery. Now, for viewers out there, and I have seen the trailer, so I know, bits and pieces about what it's about. Can you explain to viewers what's in the movie?
The Business of Recovery takes a look at the business side of the addiction treatment industry. We don't really get in, we're not talking about, like I think you mentioned earlier on, the previous show that you had, like with the family or interventions or even the actual treatments themselves. What we're looking at is the business side, how it's set up, how it's run, and some of the stuff that goes on that people were not aware of, and it's not what they think it is. So it's more of a critical look at how the industry operates with, little oversight,
right,
little science, in a lot of cases, little education.
You know what's going through my mind right now is one word: assumptions. Because I assume, as an outsider looking in, that a couple things. First of all, that there really is no business. It really is more about helping the people that are in there. But from what you're saying, you've taken almost like a little microscope to what's going on within the business. What are some of the shocking things that you found out?
Some of the most shocking things that we address in the film are the lack of educational requirements in many cases for the people that are first point of contact, or the ones that are going to direct addiction treatment. Kickbacks and referral fees are one of the sections in the film. And we actually have a doctor, Dr. Stuart Finkelstein,
yes,
who talks about, and he actually showed us the checks. Like, he received the document, had 3 checks on it. It said, "Your name here." So if he would refer patients, because he's a medical doctor with a board-certified addiction treatment doctor.
Okay.
So he has a large practice, but he treats addiction from a medical perspective, and so anyways, he has a lot of addiction clients or patients.
Right.
So he has this facility saying, if you start sending them to us, we'll pay you a 10% referral fee. And he's the one that explains the Stark legislation in the film, whereby a physician can't refer to a treatment that he owns or a pharmaceutical that's paying him.
Well, it's illegal.
It's illegal because
Right.
it's a huge conflict, right?
Right.
You're going to do what's, like he says, what's best for your pocketbook, not what's best for the patient. And with interventionists, like an interventionist telling a family that, from Rhode Island, that their patient or their son or daughter has to go to a treatment facility in San Francisco because that's where they have the best addiction treatment. And what he doesn't tell the family is he's getting 20% of whatever you spend there.
That is incredible to me. I mean, it's groundbreaking because I've never heard that before. And, one thing that is coming to mind is that I know, and this is separate, but maybe the same philosophy is a lot of pharmaceutical companies. They're no longer allowed to market to doctors and give gifts and that type of thing. Does that same type of regulation apply here?
It is absolutely absent.
Absent?
Absent.
Okay.
What Dr. Finkelstein in the film says is that, he understands that people will try to do those things, or we understand where that comes from,
Yes.
right? I'll pay you a referral if you send me patients. He says, I get that. He says, but when I checked on it, what shocked me is that it wasn't illegal. It's not so much that it's happening, it's that the fact that it's not illegal. Like, you can do that. You can pay referrals, you can accept referrals. The next wave, or the next sequence in this film, or the next films, you start looking at patient brokering or body brokering and the 800 numbers and all that. It's just this thing that we just don't do that on the medical side. You don't have an auction sale for people that broke their legs and sell them to the highest bidder. But that's what happens in the addiction treatment industry. It's this stuff that goes on. You're right. I like the way you framed that. There's a lot of good people trying to do good things in the addiction treatment industry, and they kind of get spun into this system that's less than honest. Whether it's willful or not doesn't really matter. It's just, this is what goes on. I think people are really misled in a lot of situations.
Which is a shame, because there are people there that truly want to turn their lives around and make their health better and maybe their relationships better. And one thing that I believe you touched on before the interview, you were talking about how about the training within these facilities? For example, in a hospital, we expect when we walk into the emergency room that the nurses and the doctors are trained appropriately, that they know what they're doing. Is that the same case in the recovery centers?
No, and that's another section in the film. We get into educational requirements, and counseling certificates can be earned. You see the ads online and whatnot. Become an addiction counselor in 6 months. I don't know what you could learn in 6 months that will qualify you to treat one of the most crippling diseases, or substance use disorder, whatever you want to call it, conditions. It's truly bizarre, and Dr. Bill Miller gets into this. He says in the state of New Mexico, you have to actually have a bachelor's degree in order to treat addiction, and it was controversial. And he says, there's no other situation where having a college education to treat a disease is controversial.
Yes.
But yet in addiction treatment it is. It's we understand where it came from, right? Years ago, 30s, 40s, or whatever, nobody treated addicts. They kind of were left to themselves.
Okay.
Right? They kind of looked after themselves. So, and going back to that, well, it was better than nothing. They did something. But when you look at how in medicine things have advanced, you just take an open heart surgery, you used to have to crack the breastplate open and go. I mean, that was an involved procedure, and the recovery time was like 6-8 months, a year. And now you can go in through a vein in the leg and do a quadruple bypass. Right. Yet in addiction treatment, we're still using a lot of what we did back in the 30s and 40s, and And I think that shows in the outcomes now.
Yes.
Like if you take the relapse rates, the overdose death rates are continuing to rise. Yet we have more addiction treatment. We say in the film, the number of treatment facilities has tripled, the money made has tripled, but the overdose death rates have tripled as well.
Now there's something wrong with that.
Exactly.
So let's repeat that, right? Okay, so go ahead.
In the last 25 years,
Yes.
the number of treatment facilities, whether it's IOP, inpatient, whatever, have tripled. The money being made has tripled to over $35 billion, but the overdose death rates have also tripled.
Okay, so there's a red flag right there. So
Can I add one thing?
absolutely, no, go right ahead.
In that same time,
Yes.
cancer death rates have gone down by 22%. I mean, anybody thinking that we're getting it done, if that doesn't shock them out of that mentality, I don't know what would.
That is very, very shocking. So I'm curious, I mean, if you are struggling with addiction or a family member or a friend is struggling with addiction, how confusing will it be to know where to go to get help?
We had, when we were making the film, somebody that was just associated with the film said to me, he says, "I'm so glad you're doing this." And I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "You know, my son has a problem, has an issue with drugs." And she said, "When I first found out, I got on the internet. And
Yes.
because I'm a frantic parent, I just found
Right.
out my kid's using heroin. I got to do something."
Yes.
Right? So she gets online, and she says, 2 days later, I was so thoroughly confused, I didn't know what to do. This one says this one says that, this one has the cure, this one does this one. There's no, you're a doctor.
Yeah.
If I go to a doctor with a basic fractured leg,
Right.
set splint, if I have type
There is a standard of care that you must
and
follow.
it doesn't deviate. It's not like what you think you should do.
Right.
If I have type 1 diabetes, it's insulin. It's
Yes.
not, well, we're going to try and do it through, we're going to manage your type 1 diabetes through diet and exercise. In other words, behavioral modifications. And I think what happens is you confuse, if I say a garden variety alcoholic, that's much different. And I hate to use, maybe the term garden variety isn't
Yes.
the right word, but just an alcoholic
Yes.
versus a IV heroin user or a daily crystal meth user. Those things are so different. It's like the difference between a broken leg and a cut jugular vein. They require very different treatments, and one is far more urgent than the other in many cases.
Yes.
But yet, it's this thing where we just apply, it's like they don't, well, they diagnose it in the fact that you have an addiction, but beyond that, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And
Is that treatment that you're talking about now, here's what we're going to do, in your opinion or what you have experienced, through producing this film, is it science-based? Is that treatment that we're talking about, is it based on scientific studies or is it based on something entirely different?
well, I go back to the evidence-based.
Yes.
They cling to evidence because right now, NREP, it's on the SAMHSA website, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration.
Right.
And there's 391 evidence-based treatments for addiction. So almost anything is an evidence-based treatment. But if you look at the data, like we said, if you go look to the outcomes, if you look at the science or the statistics, it's not working.
I see.
And you can't, like you said, with a treatment, this is the protocol or the term
Right,
that you,
right,
this
the
is
standard
how,
of care,
This is
right?
the standard of care of how
Yes.
we treat something. Well, okay, so I'm over here and I believe in the 12-step ideology. And we address that in the film, that 90% of the treatment facilities in the U.S. are based on the 12-step model, and another 5% are based on some variation thereof. So that's their model. But we don't, and then some will believe in the maintenance, like I said,
Right.
buprenorphine or Suboxone or methadone or what have you.
Yes.
And then others will be like with the Vivitrol or the naltrexone, which is a blocker or an antagonist. The others are a
Right.
partial agonist and a full. But in producing the film, to have myself and my director, who's a filmmaker but comes from a medical perspective, look at how, like you said, with a broken leg,
Yes.
type 1 diabetes,
Right.
or a particular type of
All
cancer.
completely different
How do you make
conditions.
sense of that?
You don't.
And because there is a very, very big behavioral component woven into addiction. So you're right. At the end of the day, whether we have great medically assisted therapies, great support groups, great psychological evaluations and counseling and whatnot, there's still that my own participation.
Yes.
Right? It's like a weight loss thing.
Right, yes.
There's great things to help me change my diet, exercise, and get myself into better shape. But there also has to be that motivating factor.
Yes.
Now, with addiction, I think part of that motivating factor from the people I've spoken with revolves around cravings, right? So it looks like they're not motivated, but how many smokers have you seen motivated to quit, but the intense withdrawal,
Yes.
the cravings for nicotine? If we don't address that,
Right.
you just have an overwhelming failure rate. So, you know, because there's that behavioral component, two things happen. One, anything looks like it works. Almost any treatment at all will have worked for somebody at some point in time.
Okay.
But we don't trace it back to their own motivating factors, right?
Right.
They were going to jail, they lost their kids, they lost their wife, they lost their job, they lost their money. You know, and they didn't die of an overdose, so kind of like, oh my God, I got to do something, right?
Right.
So there are a lot of motivators there.
Yes.
But they participated in that. So whatever you put in front of them at that time will look like it worked, but there's other factors. So we need to, first we have to determine what success is in
Yes.
treating addiction, and then we have to figure out from a scientific perspective what's working. Is it a combination? You know, we still look at medically assisted therapies combined with you know, the psychological and then the support. We actually have been accused of being hard on AA. We don't have an opinion on AA. We had a Harvard doctor talk about it. We had Dr. Bill Miller, a scientist who studied addiction, and we have AA talk about it. You decide.
Yeah.
If it was working so well, I don't think our overdose death rates would be tripling.
No, I agree with that. I mean, because that really is, that's fact-based right there. So in your opinion, having, you know, produced the film and seeing the facts that are out there, what needs to change? What needs to change, not just from a facility standpoint, but also maybe legislation even? Is there any laws that need to be changed?
Well, we have to. I have some.
That's a loaded question,
Yeah.
I know.
I have some really strong opinions about some areas in the
Yes.
addiction, and sober living is one of them.
Okay.
They are just the most, as far as I'm concerned, and I know people say there are some good ones. I get, like I said, there's probably some good heart surgeons in Tijuana too, but you're not going to send your mom there because it's cheaper or whatever. We need to start protecting addicts and getting them in an environment where they can get better, whatever that means.
Okay.
In the film, we address that towards the end of the film. You know, Dr. Finkelstein says we need, you know, we need to embrace science and medicine when we treat addiction. Ideology and just, you know, how do you say it nicely? You know, people will go and talk in a circle about things. I think that's great for support. But if you've got some deep-rooted trauma that you haven't addressed,
Right.
like I said, there's been great medical advances in you know, whether it's maintenance or blockers or whatever. There's the things that reduce cravings and help assist
Yeah.
somebody. You know, just data.
Right.
We need to collect accurate data. In the film, Bill Miller talks about when him and Reed Hester did a study, and they would phone facilities and ask, "What's your success rate?" And he said none of them said less than 80%.
Really?
And then when he asked, well, what do you base that on? He said none of them had any
Answer.
data. They just kind of were making it up. You can't do that.
No,
We
you
don't,
can't.
You know, if you have a pharmaceutical, you can love them or hate them, but they do have some pretty high, you know, hoops to jump
Well,
through.
they definitely do, and especially nowadays they do, and it's highly regulated, and it is scary that correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost seems like when regulations are low, motivation over money takes over, and that's what we're seeing in this industry. Am I correct in saying that?
There's a lot of money being made in this industry. We use a news clip in the film where there's an LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department officer at a town hall meeting, and he says, "You need to understand something." He says, "Anybody in this room right now can start a sober living home. Anybody. There's just nothing to do."
Is that right?
You can go home. You can put a sign on your house. You know, your
that's
sober living
amazing.
home, and you can charge anything you want. You can provide any type of service you want,
Right.
and you know, it's just the most bizarre thing.
And these, you know, poor families and individuals are, you know, looking for help, and then they're falling into, maybe some of them are very good and legitimate, but some may not be.
I wish the ones that were good and legitimate
Yes.
would speak up,
Uh-huh.
because I can't imagine If I ran a sober living home and the guy we feature in the film who was convicted of so many felonies he doesn't recall in his deposition, he has to think about it. When that's the person that can participate in my industry, I would be yelling from the rooftop that this has got to stop.
Yes.
I would want to stand out. I would want to make myself different. I think everybody kind of got laxed, and it's kind of easy to get into that rut.
Right.
And then you put a lot of people in there that are, their heart's in the right place. They're not malicious. They're trying to do something. But at some point in time, if this round peg in the square hole, or just like it's not working. You
Yes.
can't have somebody relapsing, going into a residential setting, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 times and tell me that somehow there's any type of success associated with that whatsoever. It's just ridiculous to make that connection.
Right.
But
No.
yet they do. Like
Yeah.
after the 20th time, see, treatment works. How did that work? It didn't
Yes,
work. It's like
right.
he got tired, ran out of money, and was going to jail and decided, like, now I've got to do something. And once he had those motivating factors, he had the proper treatment in front of him, something maybe to help deal with the cravings. He had a good psychologist to maybe help with the trauma that was buried. And then he did find support in a sober community. But we need to change the way we do all that stuff. So.
Right, change the way we think about it. And no, I definitely agree. So we're going to take a break just for a second. So for all you viewers out there, we will be right back. We're asked a lot of times, what are the goals of PlumbTalk? And honestly, that's a question that's a little difficult in a way to answer because we have so many goals. But, learning from past mistakes, I have taken these goals and we've kind of condensed them into really two different realms of goals. Number one is we aim to educate the community, and that is a very important thing for us. We are a resource, and how I like to explain that is, in our lives, a lot of us go through some trying times, and we like to, here at PlumbTalk, describe our life as a puzzle. And, any puzzle has pieces, and all of our pieces to the puzzle in our life are different. And there are times in our life, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when those pieces of the puzzle either become loose or, they're missing altogether, and we need that information. We need something to put that piece back together again. And that's what PlumbTalk aims to do. We aim to be the resources that you can really take that information and put your piece of the puzzle back together again. And we do that through many different avenues. One, and you probably have seen this, is we interview specialists in different areas. And again, that's what we're trying to do, is to bring information in to put the pieces of the puzzle back together again. So we aim to be a resource. That's one of our major goals. The second thing is our production arm that we have. And our production arm is a little different than, what typical production companies do. Our major aim with our production is to give businesses out there a voice that helps them to get their message across in a way that nobody else can. And we do that in several different ways. We are a full service production company, and we do everything from creating a program, to writing the script, to coaching on how to speak properly in front of a camera, and editing. We have state-of-the-art editing techniques. So PlumbTalk has many different goals, but they really focus on those two major arms. We aim to be a resource, and we aim to help businesses out there get their voice known and heard like it's never been heard before. Well, hey everyone, we are back, and Greg, I'll tell you what, you have been a wealth of knowledge, and for me personally, you have really shed light on this subject. I am curious though, for people out there that may be watching this and they're struggling, either they are suffering from addiction or they know of a loved one or a friend that is suffering from addiction, is there any words of advice that you can give them?
Well, the best advice is, I know that we're being critical of the industry, but if you're a parent, you got to do something. So I understand that. So
Yes.
You're kind of at your wit's end. You have to ask good questions. You cannot trust, just what they say. It's like anything else. If you don't, due diligence, if you don't ask good questions, you're kind of going to be stuck with what you get. The biggest thing for me is who's the first point of contact. Get a medically licensed professional with a specialty in addiction. If somebody just has a belief, I'm not interested. I want somebody who understands addiction in its entirety. And so try to find somebody who really understands addiction and have that, whatever their loved one is, whether it's a heroin addiction or if it's a number of, whether it's alcohol and cocaine, find out somebody who can really diagnose what's going on with the addiction with that person, their backstory, their history, and all that stuff.
Should you ask for science-based?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Get them to discern between evidence and science.
Okay, that's a great question.
There's the difference. One is
evidence
empirical.
and science.
I always say those evidence-based treatment are the three most dangerous words out there now because they sound so good to a desperate parent, and they really mean nothing. If you ask Bill Miller, they mean nothing.
Okay.
It just means that one study out of 30 may have showed that it worked while 29 said it didn't. I don't know if you want to use that as the benchmark. That doesn't make the placebo, It's like one-on-one counseling.
Okay.
Shows the greatest outcome, has the biggest impact on outcome. Is if you're in a residential setting, how much one-on-one time are you getting with a qualified, therapist, psychologist, or counselor? Because that's where the money is. When we ask people, where's your bang for your buck? Sitting in a circle and talking. You can go to an IOP, you can go to AA meeting. Those are free. A bed is a bed, food is food, and the other stuff is just activity. Where the rubber meets the road is that one-on-one with a qualified psychologist, medically assisted therapies. Look at one who embraces everything. If I'm going to a hospital, I'm not going to go to a hospital that just has penicillin because I'm allergic to penicillin.
Yes, okay.
I want to go to a hospital that has an X-ray machine, an MRI machine, a trauma surgeon, when you go through the doors.
Comprehensive care, right?
Comprehensive care. So when you go there, that for me, maybe I would do better on buprenorphine coupled with this, this, and that. Maybe for someone else, it might be Vivitrol and naltrexone. There's options. Have the place that what we had a hard time finding was somebody that did everything.
Really?
Some do this, some do that. It's kind of like fractured, and they all believe what they're doing works, and they all know how to sell it. But it's just a bizarre thing. Again, it doesn't. It's no cohesiveness. So to find comprehensive treatment, science is a big thing. What are their educational requirements to work there? Who's running? If you got somebody who's just a layperson running a group, I don't know what value that has.
No. Yeah. So they have to have some sort of credentials with regards to.
And when the other thing is starting at the highest level of care.
Yes.
Right. As a physician, you don't. I'm having a heart issue. They don't do a heart transplant. They're going to work up to that, right?
Yes.
Well, in addiction treatment, you got to go to residential treatment. Well, if IOP, intensive outpatient therapy, you get essentially the same things you would get at inpatient, except you're not sleeping there. I don't know that the bed is going to make the difference. Because if they're not going to do it in outpatient, all you're doing in inpatient is kicking the can down the street. They won't do it while, they might stay clean while they're there, but if they relapse in days, weeks, or months after residential setting, I don't know what you gained.
Right, right.
So,
I understand.
It's have somebody diagnose it and then, the different level, understand the different levels of care. But it goes back to asking good questions.
Asking good questions. I mean, that is incredibly important, and not being, afraid to ask those questions, the right questions. I think that you have given all of us a lot to think about, that's for sure. So for people out there who are hearing this conversation and they really want to know more about the movie or even see the movie, contact you, ask questions, where would you point them?
It's called The Business of Recovery,
okay.
And we have the website, www.thebusinessofrecovery.com. They can go there. There's information about different treatments and things like that. They can view the trailer. We're actually screening at the Palm Beach International Film Festival Friday evening.
Okay, great.
So if they can get out there, they can see it there. If they have any questions, comments, or want to contact us, we have thousands of people that reach out to us and say, that was what happened to me. And some of them reach out to us and say they don't like me so much. And we welcome all comments and all feedback. And if they go to the website, they can email us through the website any comments or questions that they have.
Right.
So.
Okay, perfect. Well, on behalf of the entire PlumbTalk team, we thank you for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation, and for all you viewers out there, this has been another edition of From the Hip. Until next time, this is Dr. Shelley Plumb.